Okay. Hello, everyone. As we look upon who we are internally gazing at forms that we have identified to be our shape. So when we look out, we consider a form before we look at any form. Now, through certain meditative practice, and when I say meditative practice, there's two sides to it. There is one where you go and appreciate the practice and enjoy the whole process practically based on what's there, or you can begin your own practice. You can begin working with your mind and seeing what is practical to you. Perhaps you are not willing to sit on the floor of a monastery, but you are willing to sit on the grass. And so it is about how you are engaging all that you see. And there comes the play of the creator and creation, and eventually it all dissolves into the moment where existence is to be perceived. Even in many ways, we have seen that one man can get lost and be found, and so the golden ratio is always a beautiful gaze, because we see that in our most greatest vision of the star, we have in a sense touched the star, and we have touched our ambitions, and we must recollect and let our imagination begin building its own methodology based on us getting out of our comfort zone. Once you're out of your comfort zone, you make your own path, and once you are making your own path, you begin to recognize the beauty of your path, because you realize the hands, you look at the texture, you look at how you're placing every step. And so once you get a reevaluation of the moment that encompasses first everything you know and then brings it all to a point of still nothingness, silent nothingness, it is through there that we begin then envisioning a truth that is bright. It does not originate in, at first, a social way. In other words, society is a certain focus of form, certain forms, and it's constantly changing. And to recognize that as our time comes to an end, we do not think of death as something we know. We don't know. We don't know what is across the veil, and we can never be too arrogant to ignore that. We are constantly aware that we are present now, but in our sense of presence, there are memory. There's attention to memory. And this attention to memory can reach a point where it no longer judges itself. It no longer has any sense of, fear, sadness, anger, because it's not looking at those games anymore. You're looking at a more existential game. You're looking at the origin of your being, and once you look at it, there's a sense of opening into a sense of emptiness. And in this emptiness comes a sense of clarity. It's presented there. It's like the minute the orange is squeezed, all the juice just is directed to leave, and we see that we are not fruits, but we can be fruitful in our action. We can look at the beauty of a gentle and elegant world through chaotic eyes. We can give chaos a permission to reorganize our order, and chaos does not mean ideas. It never means ideas. Chaos is what all ideas are trying to reach, and also within that chaos, all ideas are ordered. So if I get a box of matches and place these matches in a certain arrangement, and all these matches suddenly came to life, the fire of their thoughts will be that we are placed in an order. So you have been introduced to life through an ordered and organized human being, to then see, once you cannot maintain that illusion of organization, you have innately that which is within you, your chaos, to confront. And it may be very chaotic at first. You may have images, you may look at the self that can, not be attached, and you wonder what that means. How can you be detached when your senses, when the light in your eyes is connected to what it's showing you, when the hologram is as real as that kiss that just wakes you up? You see that in your construction and in your own illumination, you need to bring words towards you which you appreciate. So you're not just choosing, how would I say, you're not just choosing the clothes you wear, you can also choose the thoughts that you, in a sense, dissolve in, because you're such a transparent ability that you just receive the wisdom that is the other eye. And what that means is that we have a lot of connotations surrounded to eyes, but we must never be afraid of it. We must never be afraid of perception. We must never be judgmental of any perception, because that is fundamentally what the human origin comes down to, sensitivity to existence. And you look at existence and you see that it is your mind that at first is implying the meaning of what perhaps death means, but death begins to suddenly turn and change, and you see that what you thought was death was your most immediate confrontation of all the value you had built in life. So I am born, and as I walk, it is not the snowball effect that is being maintained, but you just see that you are an absorption of everything you've seen, and your mind is its own blend of what it provides in your alertness, and your attentiveness is very natural. And once you examine through nature's eyes, you're never alone. You are existentially present, you suddenly, you first receive the clarity to then be able to perceive the message, or in a sense, to receive the message, If you speak, and before you have spoken, I have ignited a world, which is my internal reality of who you are, then I will never truly hear you, but how my imagination is creating a sense of your being in front of my being. And is beingness is the concept of being together, one that is only meant to be visible, or could we, in our most deepest roots, perceive the invisible essence, the generators of existential knowing that are keeping your remembrance pillared to this reality, these beams of light which are as present as the moment you visualize them? You are seeing that the mind and the imagination can, through its organization and its ability to allow its organization to fall and transform, to become the immortal caterpillar's metamorphosis into the butterfly it always thought it was a step behind. We are not madness in our own sense of being civil. We look at reality, and from then we judge, and no one is supposed to have the same beliefs. No one is supposed to just be the same person, because every person right now who is alive to even hear my voice through a distance of space and time is an occupation of a cause of being. You are a moment of presence. And so if you become insensitive and you make what is a flower into a plastic flower, then of course you will never smell the truth and even see the elegance of the design. You will touch that plastic flower and you will see that it would melt in the fires of greater understanding. You cannot carry it. And so what remains is, at first, your ability to ignore any image in romance, but to be absorbed in the purity of the love and the beingness in the moment. As one begins to be touched by life, existence becomes apparent to you in ways in which, as if your mind is like a pilot. You're traveling through these skies of all forms and illusion. I am not breathing just air. There are thoughts flowing through me which are not from me. but in a sense always are. And our imagination is a place of exploration, and once you have found the ability to explore it, you must communicate it. You must communicate it either through your voice, as I am doing. You must communicate it through, not in a way where you are communicating. It is nature's communication. So once the communication comes out of you, once these words that are naturally coming at me, it does not mean I am constantly throughout the day at this intensity of speech. But when I choose to see the infinity of the ability to have infinite potential, I do not let the mud on my shoes stop me from the appointments I have in experiencing beautiful moments of being. Throughout the day, we are our own complexity. And again, every person's beliefs that are to be different is because you are seeing that you are being present of a different space. In other words, if we're chilling in a living room and I am on a couch and you're on another couch, you are on that couch, I'm here. And so we are both origins of awareness in our own unique molded way in which we have grown to be tolerant. So in a sense, we are seeing a blending of human consciousness through love. So you first acknowledge that you have human consciousness, you're a human being experiencing life. Then you acknowledge the idea of this. And the idea of this is kept still by the clarity and the objectivity, because seeing is believing for now. And you begin to continue, and so the objective reality is placed, but you see you're being aware of it through thought. And where is thought? It is formless, but does it mean it's endless? Does it mean that it ends, or does it mean that it could never end, because it's of a different fabric, it's a different quality of reality, Similar to how when I was a kid, and I remember I was very randomly and unnecessarily given so much handwriting homework, and I remember sitting down and doing this doing these letters and constantly drawing and seeing how many ways there are to write the same letter. And so what we're here doing is creating a sense of precision to find our greater sense of originality, which is giving or gives your life's work, gives an expression that you are absorbed in a greater being. And when I say greater being, it is not one that needs to be limited to the form. Even though I am using language, I am not stepping on these objects. In other words, language is simply, or anything that you can perceive, is simply what is placed in your awareness. So if I am walking into a room where I perceive many objects on the ground, it is important to mindfully and gently and compassionately and lovingly and peacefully and consciously and self-awarely and self-reflectively and internally allowing to walk past that which I don't want to step on. We need to acknowledge ourselves as honestly and truthful as possible. Honesty is not a luxury. It is not like a luxury for an authentically good human being, in quotations, Some people may not have money to indulge in, but they indulge in other forms. And so we always use other forms to kind of define ourselves, but when we don't want to move our hands, we cannot name the nameless. And, in this understanding blooms the ability to see that the reality in our thoughts that we have immediately maintained. So in other words, how you're hearing my voice right now, there is a moment within you that is acknowledging it, that is receiving it, or in a sense, creating it. Now, as you become aware of this origin of creation, which is your being, which is this internal sense of inner, radiation, where you are emitting things, you actually see you are. In a sense, the light that can be captured in many ways can also be freed in many ways. And you see that the many ways you have found your life to be an illusion are actually the many ways you're giving yourself a ladder back to freedom. And it's not that some people don't get tired. Some people love climbing mountains, And, without cold feet, they go in, they go in. Reality is beautiful. It is meaningless in its beauty. It is elegant. And I have learned from the poet, before I can bring any linear understanding, that love is beautifully, compassionately, and lovingly insane. It is crazy. It does not work based on your sense of worry, your sense of stress. It does not come in that way. There is love in many ways, and when I say existential love, guys, many people have experienced the love of a companion, and that is always a great gift. But there is also the gift one can give to self, and that is why the name Mr.Within becomes significant, because you are now ready to find that which you are. So after we have acknowledged the symbol, in other words, once we're observing the objects that are illusion, once you're observing your illusion, you're not in the space of your illusion, but you have an immediate access of your illusion. So you see, the person who is creating the illusion is instantly experiencing the illusion. And so it is very hard for that, let's say, ceramic master who is, in a sense, with his hands on that spinning wheel, shaping that clay. Just visualize for a second the ceramic master's vision just gets stuck on the spinning surface of the clay that's in front of his eyes, and he forgets his hands. And as this clay master, is naturally moving his hands based on his greater sense of just having done this so many times, is dissolved in a moment of his work, is dissolved into that which begins to show an infinite radiation. In other words, what those beings who call or talk about a sense of infinity, which they will never be able to describe, are ones who have found that through their allowance and their attention and sensitivity to the elegance and the natural rhythms of life, that they are being invited exactly, and they are heading to the party they need to be at, to the moment they need to be present in, to the person that needs to be presented to others. Playfulness means you're not wasting anything. Playfulness means that in the eye of the drunken master, who had lived both lives, both sides of the spectrum, there was the smile of a child, not knowing what to do. And some, people in mainly their older years, they see that their attention has been so much on what is life that they have not been able to become aware of life. What that means is that if I, as an attention, as divine attention, as a sacred being, as every being is, as existence that is illuminated now within this moment, as I acknowledge that I am physically here, I am here, do not doubt. The moment I nod, the moment that degree in the tilt of my head occurs, I am present here, but with that same degree of tilt, I am that which is perceiving the present, that which is aware of the observance of the present. And you are this, in a sense, burst of divine attention that forgets about its sense of past and future, and doesn't even need the word present, and it's just absorbed. You are just the energy that you are, aware of itself in its most expressive allowance, existential allowance, And through that, we find that imagination may seem like an unexplored nation. We may not have traveled, we may not have studied linear ways of accessing technologies that work in the subtler realms of conception that are always present behind our eyes, in that inner unknown. You have an inner known and you have an inner unknown, and once these two become playful one another, existence has turned around itself, and the circle of life has just twisted like the infinity sign that always knew there was no end, but only an end to form. For formless presence is now trying to be touched by us, by our rationality, trying to be touched by our thoughts. But you see, in that trying, it is too solidly defined to be transcendent. And so that is why once you can see, you cannot see your truth in the words of others, you begin looking at the truth within your words. You begin seeing that if you were to speak about who you are and to listen to that lecture, would you stand still or would your eyes be looking through the cosmos? Can you give yourself that permission that allows your imagination to, for a second, stop with the rationality game, and to, in a sense, in your sense of still silent absorption, where you're not having any like conscious external, in other words, I'm not talking, you're in a sense moving in your stillness, but while you've been always moving, you find the stillness. So you see, people are in different states. Some people hearing my talk, they are oriented through a sense of stillness right now. They're still. Others are walking, are moving, and they have this dynamic experience. So we want from the dynamic stillness to, sorry, not the dynamic stillness, but from the dynamic sense of ourselves. In other words, we're separated, we're moving, everything's going on, everything's happening, it's your normal day, to, in a sense, acknowledge where we are right now to be an accumulation of everything that we can be aware of in just now. And in that simple acknowledgement, you allow your life to grow. We are, in a sense, a plant that is stemming out in ways where we don't know, and we need to allow. We are self-aware, so that means we have choice. And if some part of nature is given choice to act out of nature, to act disharmoniously with its environment, even though that is innately impossible, but in a sense it is possible, in that possibility, we must still listen to life. And after the greatest talks, and after perhaps every lecture that every greatest lecturer has ever given, they have recognized that the last lecture is with themselves. And it is not that you are saying, it is that there is a beauty in creative expression. So there have been moments where I talk about certain things, where the thought, the thing I'm talking about is so beautiful to me that I absorb, in a sense, where I can't, in a sense, rationally keep myself not absorbed in the thought. So, in a sense, I will try to demonstrate this very calmly, and I want you to right now see that this is going to be an extended recording. This is going to be one where I have a really nice feeling of just communicating certain methods of my own creation, methods that have come to me now. So listen, in a sense, because we are all engaged in this exploration of self-discovery. Now, before we get into any meditation or any idea or any journey through voice, we want to, at first, see that we are present. We want to be grateful for this presence, and what gratefulness means is that we begin seeing integratively and in a very appreciative way all that exists. In other words, you don't need to just thank the waiter at the restaurant. You also need to thank everything that has positioned you here to be alive. And that is an enormity, because you are first conceiving yourself as an individuality. So what that means is that, imagine like the golden ratio, you're constantly fluctuating between different identifications of collectivity and individuality. And so we want to increase the collectivity because we have found individuation. We have found human beings are individuals. Now we see, like, how would I say this pleasantly? I want to say this in a way where we see that society is growing towards kindness. Regardless, kindness always blooms. Kindness is not a seed that is planted just in mankind. What that means is that the compassion which you feel is not just the dropping into the stream or the river, but the river knowing of the waterfall that is coming, which then leads to the ocean. So after your apocalypse, there is a confrontation of self. And guess what? When the temporal looks at itself again after its demise, eternity is cultivated within the being. So on some level, we are here, in a sense, as temporally as I can say, and I want to make this really quick, I don't want to talk about it too much. We see that we are having a temporal experience, but the holistic view of our sense of being is done by our greater, you're connected to it, it's a greater connection of your awareness. So in other words, the object of observance and the observer are both beingness, a moment of being. And let these words be your liftoff into just natural relief that life knows where it's heading, and nature is never late. Nature is never late, and neither are you, or any sense of self, or any form. And in allowance, we find a compassion that cannot be named. It is you. Within this universe. Much blessings,